Well, hello, my dears. Welcome back. I got a doozy of a topic for you today, and that is the YouTube rabbit hole theory. It's really taken on a life of its own. You guys have probably heard of it. The basic idea here is that the YouTube algorithm can radicalize people by recommending, sort of increasingly fringe and extreme and kooky videos. So over time, the theory goes that YouTube is churning out a new generation of conspiracy theorists, political radicals, and general madness. Let's assume people are being radicalized on YouTube. I am skeptical that the YouTube algorithm is to blame. While the rabbit hole theory is certainly the most popular explanation, when you take a closer look, it seems possible that this beast is much larger and much more human than an algorithm. To understand YouTube's potential role in radicalization, first we need to ask, well, what is the YouTube algorithm doing exactly? YouTube, like most tech companies, doesn't tell us. For some legitimate reasons, to be fair. If YouTube just said, here's what the algorithm is, anybody could game it, right? It would unleash chaos on the whole platform, and rival businesses could steal it. But on the flip side, the complete lack of transparency creates problems of its own. For instance, are LGBT YouTubers being demoted by the algorithm? There is a lawsuit happening right now that claims just that. For researchers, the mystery creates an additional problem. How do you study an algorithm if you don't know what's in it? It's not impossible, but you have to be creative. Enter Dr. Anna Zaitsev. Her research recently made a big splash for challenging the rabbit hole theory. In order for the rabbit hole theory to be true, we should be recommended more and more fringe videos over time, right? But Anna and her colleague, Mark Ledwich, found the opposite. It's actually recommending more mainstream ones.
It does show that a lot of these smaller classifications, the smaller categories, are not getting too many recommendations, and a lot of the recommendations is funneled to these large mainstream media channels. There is a partisan split in terms of where does the traffic go, but the trend that the traffic goes to mainstream media rather than anything independent YouTuber content is the same on both ends of the political aisles.
There's still plenty of room to learn more about this, but their conclusions are supported by another study that was just published last week. And when you think about it, YouTube funneling people toward more mainstream media sources like CNN or Fox News, it just makes a lot of business sense.
I think in YouTube's mind, it's probably just easier to go with the content that has been vetted, especially if you have a cable news show, and the cable news or other channels, they are much more regulated. So their content's already safe and clean for advertisers. So you're not taking any risks by funneling people to Tucker Carlson or Jimmy Kimmel or anyone like that.
On matters of news and politics and such, independent creators are not being recommended as much. They do face a steep uphill climb in building a community. At least now they do. Is it possible that before the YouTube algorithm changed in 2018 that YouTube was promoting more fringe content?
So that is definitely possible. And it might be that there was a YouTube, let's say, this more rabbit hole radicalization pipeline before that. The thing is that we can't really prove that because we don't have the data from that time. And YouTube has said that they have changed the algorithm and they are steering people away. They've been especially talking about the conspiracy content.
So that means it's possible that the media was right to sound the alarm, that there was something bad happening. And that's what we hope for the media to do, right? To be sort of a watchdog. But even so, Anna suggests, and also I suggest, that we should keep a critical eye on how the mainstream media covers YouTube. What stories do they choose to run? What claims are they making about YouTube? And most importantly, what kind of evidence do they offer?
It is a compelling story, and it is easy to point fingers at social media, which is a novel medium, and I think people are still trying to figure it out. And how are we going to be using this, and how it can exist as societies with this thing existing alongside, and if there can be a civil discussion on these platforms or not. So for media to go on a, let's say, attack mode against social media and keep this meme of radicalization running, I think it's just beneficial for them because they will want to have some kind of ammo against social media platforms, which are their business competitors.
All right, maybe the YouTube algorithm itself isn't the big boogeyman that it's made out to be anymore. Maybe. Couldn't people be radicalized in other ways? I think it's pretty obvious at this point that the internet can contribute to bad behavior, ranging from run-of-the-mill dumbassery all the way up to actual violence. And so we should, try to make sense of what's happening here. If people are being radicalized, how is it happening? That right there is the million-dollar question, and I do not have the answer to it. But I wanted to share with you guys, 3 sort of ideas to think about, thoughts to chew on, based on what we do know right now. First off, we do know that radicalization is nothing new. Groups of people have been radicalized all over the world, all throughout history. So in general, when we're thinking about the problems that have been, created by technology, we should be careful, not to assign disproportionate blame to technology itself. Now, lucky for us, there's already a ton of research about how people can become radicalized, how they can become very extreme in their beliefs. There's rarely a single cause, but here are a few. Social isolation, holding beliefs that blame a demonized outgroup for their problems, personality traits like narcissism and paranoia, no surprises there, or when other people violate values that are deemed sacred to the believer. So, I'm referring to beliefs that are really central to the person's identity and how they see the world. So it could be the case that social media is providing more opportunities, more pathways, and speeding up the process for people that were already primed to be radicalized before they logged on. All right, second idea for you guys to chew on. We also know that given the oversaturation of media available, if media doesn't tell people what they want to hear, or a platform doesn't allow them to say what they think, they will go elsewhere. Anna said, this supply and demand idea could be behind the explosion of right-wing content on YouTube in 2016. There are several, sort of more liberal-leaning cable news channels, but there's really only one right-leaning, Fox News.
There's the lack of that content on the left wing from independent YouTubers because the area is already covered by the mainstream. So you don't have to start your own channel that's going to be talking about those issues. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, there isn't anyone who's talking in mainstream media about, let's say, the conspiracy theory stuff.
In other words, it may be the case that, fringier types of content may not be growing in popularity online just because they exist, but because there was an unmet demand for that content to begin with. I think it's also important to pay attention to what's happening on Twitter and Facebook right now as they've started to crack down on conspiracy theories and misinformation. There has been a mass movement of those users to other platforms like Parler. Parler acquired millions of signups in weeks. It's a startup's wet dream, right? These alternative platforms are meeting a current demand with one very worrying caveat. They provide much deeper insulation from outside perspectives. Which brings me to my final thought. It's not just Parler. We know that most of us watching YouTube are already in echo chambers. People left, right, and center are funneled toward more videos that affirm their own beliefs, even if those, videos are more mainstream sources. We also know that YouTube echo chambers exist from people's subscriptions. This is actually how Anna's latest project, Transparency Tube, managed to classify the political leanings of thousands of channels. Now, it's not 100% perfect, and, I kind of wonder if my channel might be an outlier in that respect, because I hear, in the comments, you guys, I hear from people all over the political spectrum, with the exception maybe of the really radical, far left, far right stuff. But by and large, it is true that on YouTube, people tend to subscribe to videos and content creators that match, that fit into their own political bubble. Now, this echo chambers issue is deeply distressing to me personally, and I just wanted to share a few, personal thoughts on this with you guys. I have been on YouTube since 2007 is when I posted my first video, and I've watched so many people that I've followed for years on here and on other social media slowly become more insulated from outside perspectives, become more dogmatic, become more angry. Occasionally, some of those people have, made arguments that justify violent behavior. There is a growing body of research that suggests that people in echo chambers tend to adopt more extreme positions over time. They've found that part of the problem is that echo chambers make it hard for people to disagree, for fear of being ostracized or outcast. So instead, we start parroting what the acceptable ideas and talking points are with our in-group. There's a lot of interesting psychological things that are happening there. TLDR, could echo chambers play a role in all of this, in this radicalization pipeline? Maybe. It feels good to point our finger at one boogeyman and say, the algorithm did this, rather than really examine ourselves, examine our environment, and how maybe some of these digital norms are contributing to these problems. What an interesting and horrifying mess. Anna and I chat in much more detail on the podcast, so if this is something that you also like to geek out about, please join us. Do let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks for joining me, my dears. I'll see you next time.